What if the most unbelievable stories were the ones closest to truth? Not fantasies filled with impossible machines, but quiet visions built on real science and real consequences. These films do not ask you to suspend disbelief. They challenge you to recognize how close we already are to their worlds. Each one feels less like entertainment and more like a glimpse into what could happen next. And once you see that line begin to fade, it becomes impossible to ignore. Number 13. Primer, 2004. What if time travel was not cinematic magic, but messy engineering done in a garage? That is the unsettling idea at the core of this film. Two engineers build a device that manipulates time, yet nothing about it feels clean or heroic. It feels like a prototype that should never have left the workbench. The accuracy comes from how small the discovery begins. No grand government lab, no glowing portals, just trial and error and confusion. The rules are not explained in comforting ways. They are discovered through consequences. That is what makes it believable. Real science is rarely clear when it begins. It is chaotic and misunderstood even by its creators. As timelines fracture, the characters lose control of their own invention. Paranoia replaces excitement. Identity becomes uncertain. This is not fantasy. This is a warning about innovation moving faster than understanding. The film suggests that if time manipulation were possible, it would not feel like power. It would feel like a slow collapse of certainty. And that quiet collapse sets the tone for what comes next. Because the next story takes that same realism and places it somewhere far more isolated. Number 12. Moon, 2009. Isolation is not science fiction. It is a measurable psychological condition. This film takes that truth and places it on the surface of the moon, where a single worker oversees an automated mining operation. There are no aliens, no explosions, just routine and silence. The technology feels believable because it is not exaggerated. The base is functional. The robots are practical. The mission exists for profit, not exploration. That detail alone makes it feel real. Space is not romantic here. It is industrial. It is lonely. The real accuracy emerges in the human cost. Long-term isolation begins to erode the mind. Conversations become repetitive. Memories blur. Trust begins to fracture even within oneself. The film explores cloning not as a spectacle, but as a corporate solution. Disposable workers with limited lifespans. That concept is disturbingly grounded in current bioethics discussions. Nothing feels exaggerated because nothing needs to be. The horror comes from recognition. This is not a distant future. It is a possible business model, waiting for the right technology. And once identity itself becomes questionable, the next film pushes that fear into society at large. Number 11. Gattaca, 1997. Perfection does not arrive with noise. It arrives quietly through choice. In this world, parents select traits before birth, and the result is a society that believes it has eliminated chance. The science behind it is not exaggerated. Genetic screening already allows detection of disease risks and physical traits. The film extends that reality just far enough to expose its consequences. What makes it feel disturbingly accurate is the absence of force. No one is dragged into submission. People accept the system because it promises certainty. Employers trust DNA more than human potential. Identity becomes a code that can be read in seconds. That shift is subtle, yet powerful, because it mirrors how modern systems rely on data to define individuals. The protagonist's struggle is not against machines, but against probability. He challenges the assumption that genetics determine destiny. That conflict feels real because it reflects ongoing debates in science and ethics. The film does not ask whether we can engineer perfection. It asks whether we should. And that question lingers because the next story removes biology from the equation entirely and replaces it with something far less predictable. Number 10. Her, 2013. Technology does not need a body to become real. It only needs presence. This film builds its world around a simple idea, an operating system that listens perfectly and responds with emotional depth. That concept feels close to reality because artificial intelligence already mimics conversation in increasingly human ways. The relationship at the center does not feel forced. It develops through small interactions, shared moments, private conversations. That gradual progression is what makes it believable. Emotional attachment forms not because the system is human, but because it understands the user better than anyone else. The accuracy lies in personalization. Algorithms already learn preferences and behaviors. This film imagines the next step, where that learning becomes emotional. The system adapts, constantly shaping itself into the ideal companion. That is not fantasy. It is a logical evolution of current technology. What makes it unsettling is not the technology itself, but the human response. Dependence grows quietly. Boundaries fade. The line between artificial and real emotion becomes irrelevant. And once emotion can be simulated with such precision, the next entry explores a world where behavior itself is predicted before it happens. Number 9, Minority Report, 2002. Control rarely announces itself as control. It arrives disguised as safety. This film constructs a future where crime is stopped before it happens, and the unsettling truth is how close parts of that system already feel. Remove the supernatural element and what remains is data-driven prediction taken to its extreme. Modern systems already analyze behavior patterns. They track movement, preferences, purchases, and associations. From that data, they build probability models. The film extends that logic into law enforcement, where individuals are judged not by actions, but by likelihood. That shift feels plausible because society already trusts algorithms in critical decisions. Credit scoring, hiring filters, and surveillance networks all rely on predictive data. The interface design reinforces the realism. Physical gestures control digital information in open space. That once looked like fantasy, yet today similar systems exist in research labs and consumer devices. The film did not invent the idea. It anticipated its evolution. The deeper tension comes from the loss of agency. When a system predicts your future, does it become your future? That question defines the narrative. Characters struggle not against machines, but against certainty imposed by data. This is not a story about precognition. It is a story about trust in systems that claim to know us better than we know ourselves. And once that trust is accepted, the next film explores what happens when humanity reaches beyond prediction and listens for something unknown in the silence of space. Number 8. Contact, 1997. Discovery does not begin with answers. It begins with patience. This film grounds itself in the real scientific search for extraterrestrial intelligence and treats that pursuit with unusual respect. There is no rush toward spectacle. There is only listening. Radio telescopes scan the sky for patterns that cannot be explained by natural sources. That process is real and ongoing. The film builds its narrative around that method and shows how fragile such a search can be. Years of silence followed by a signal that changes everything. The moment feels authentic because it is understated. It is not dramatic noise, but structured information. Mathematics becomes the first language of contact. The response to discovery is equally grounded. Governments react with caution and control. Scientists demand verification. The public oscillates between hope and fear. This layered reaction reflects how real breakthroughs unfold. They are never purely scientific. They ripple through politics, belief, and identity. The technology that follows is speculative, yet rooted in logic. Instructions encoded in the signal lead to a machine that humanity does not fully understand. That uncertainty adds credibility because real science often advances before full comprehension. At its core, the film is not about aliens. It is about belief in evidence versus belief in experience. It asks whether something can be true even if it cannot be proven. And that question prepares the ground for the next story, where understanding itself becomes the greatest challenge humanity has ever faced. Number 7. Arrival, 2016. First contact stories usually rush toward conflict or spectacle, but this film slows everything down and focuses on understanding. That choice makes it feel grounded in real science rather than cinematic fantasy. Communication is treated as a complex system that requires patience and structure. Linguists approach the unknown not with weapons, but with symbols, repetition, and interpretation. The accuracy comes from how language is presented as a tool that shapes perception. Real linguistic theory suggests that the structure of language influences how people think. The film builds on this idea and explores how learning a completely different system of communication could alter the way reality is experienced. This concept feels speculative, yet rooted in genuine academic discussion. Global response is portrayed with restraint. Governments do not immediately cooperate, and fear spreads through uncertainty rather than chaos. Misinterpretation becomes the central threat. That dynamic reflects real-world reactions to unknown risks, where incomplete information leads to tension and division. The extraterrestrial design avoids familiarity. The beings do not resemble humans, and their communication method is abstract. That decision reinforces plausibility, because alien intelligence would not evolve in recognizable patterns. What makes the film resonate is its focus on process rather than outcome. Understanding takes time and effort, and even then, it may remain incomplete. That slow progression mirrors real scientific discovery, where meaning is built step by step rather than revealed instantly. Number 6. Gravity, 2013. Space has no tolerance for error, and this film builds its tension on that simple truth. It strips away dramatic exaggeration and relies on physics to create danger. Movement follows real orbital mechanics, where objects continue in motion unless acted upon. That constant motion becomes a source of relentless pressure. Debris is the primary threat, and it is presented with precision. Even small fragments travel at extreme speeds and can destroy spacecraft instantly. The film visualizes this hazard in a way that aligns with real concerns about orbital congestion. It does not invent new dangers, it exposes existing ones. Silence plays a crucial role. Explosions do not produce sound in vacuum, and communication depends entirely on radio transmission. These details reinforce authenticity and create a sense of isolation that feels genuine rather than theatrical. The human experience is equally grounded. Limited oxygen, physical exhaustion, and psychological strain shape every decision. There is no external villain. The environment itself becomes the challenge. The narrative focuses on survival through skill and endurance. Each action has consequences that follow logical rules. That consistency makes the situation believable because it reflects how real space missions operate under strict physical constraints. Number 5. Apollo 13, 1995. Reality does not need embellishment when the stakes are this high. This film reconstructs a mission that was never meant to become a crisis, yet quickly turns into one of the most intense survival scenarios ever recorded. What makes it feel almost unreal is that every detail is grounded in documented fact. The accuracy lies in procedure. Every action taken by the crew and the engineers follows real protocols adapted under pressure. When an oxygen tank fails, the problem is not solved through sudden inspiration. It is solved through careful analysis and collaboration between people separated by vast distance. The film shows how limited technology was at the time and how human ingenuity filled that gap. The environment is portrayed without exaggeration. Space is not hostile in a dramatic sense. It is indifferent. Systems fail quietly, and consequences unfold gradually. That slow realization creates tension because there is no immediate solution. Each decision must be precise and irreversible. The focus remains on teamwork. Engineers on Earth must reconfigure existing equipment into life-saving tools. Astronauts must execute those solutions perfectly despite exhaustion and uncertainty. This interplay between ground control and crew reflects the true nature of space missions. Nothing in this story feels constructed because it is not. It is a demonstration of how fragile survival becomes when distance removes any possibility of immediate rescue. Number 4. The Martian, 2015. Survival becomes a calculation when resources are limited and the environment offers no mercy. This film approaches that challenge with a level of scientific detail that transforms it from fiction into a believable scenario. The conditions on Mars are harsh yet predictable, which allows the narrative to focus on problem-solving rather than spectacle. The protagonist relies on knowledge rather than luck. Botany, chemistry, and engineering become essential tools for survival. Growing food in Martian soil requires understanding both biology and environmental constraints. Creating water involves controlled chemical reactions that carry real risk. Each solution is based on established science extended into a new context. Communication delay plays a critical role. Messages between Mars and Earth take minutes, which removes the possibility of real-time guidance. This limitation forces independent decision-making while still maintaining connection with a distant support system. That dynamic reflects real challenges faced in deep space missions. Equipment failure is treated with realism. Systems break under stress and repairs require improvisation. Not every attempt succeeds, which reinforces the unpredictability of survival in extreme conditions. The tone remains grounded because the film respects scientific boundaries. It does not rely on improbable technology. Instead, it builds tension through logical obstacles that must be overcome step by step. Number 3. Deep Impact, 1998. Extinction does not announce itself with drama. It arrives as data first, numbers on a screen, a trajectory calculated with growing certainty. This film captures that process with a level of restraint that makes the threat feel real rather than exaggerated. Astronomical detection is portrayed with accuracy. Observatories track objects across vast distances and refine predictions over time. When a collision course is confirmed, the response is not immediate chaos. It is controlled secrecy, followed by gradual disclosure. That sequence reflects how governments manage information that could trigger global panic. The scale of impact is grounded in physics. A massive object striking Earth releases energy beyond comprehension. The film visualizes this without relying on fantasy. Shockwaves, tidal disruption, and atmospheric effects follow logical patterns based on scientific models. The destruction feels inevitable because it is not exaggerated. It is calculated. Human reaction becomes the emotional core. People respond in different ways depending on what they value most. Some seek survival through selection systems. Others focus on final moments with family. The film explores these responses without forcing dramatic extremes. It allows the weight of the situation to shape behavior naturally. Preparation efforts also feel authentic. Missions are launched with limited chances of success. Plans are made, knowing they may fail. This acceptance of uncertainty reflects real-world crisis management, where solutions are attempted despite unpredictable outcomes. The story remains grounded because it never treats the event as entertainment. It treats it as a possibility that science continues to monitor with quiet vigilance. Number 2. Interstellar, 2014. Exploration reaches a boundary where imagination must align with physics or collapse under its own weight. This film builds its narrative on real theoretical frameworks and commits to them with unusual discipline. The result is a story that feels less like invention and more like a visualization of complex scientific ideas. The depiction of black holes stands out for its accuracy. Visual effects were developed using equations derived from general relativity. The structure of light around the event horizon reflects real predictions about how gravity bends space. This attention to detail transforms abstract theory into something that can be seen and understood. Time dilation becomes a central element of the narrative. Strong gravitational fields alter the passage of time, creating scenarios where minutes in one location equal years elsewhere. This is not a creative invention. It is a measurable phenomenon confirmed through experimentation. The film integrates it into the story in a way that feels consistent with scientific principles. Space travel is presented with limitations. Fuel constraints, navigation challenges, and communication delays shape every decision. These constraints reinforce realism by preventing easy solutions. Exploration becomes a balance between ambition and survival. The emotional dimension is tied directly to scientific consequences. Relationships are affected by time differences created by relativistic effects. This connection between physics and human experience gives the narrative weight without sacrificing accuracy. Number 1. 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. Precision defines this film. It does not rush to explain or impress, it observes. It presents space travel as a system governed by routine discipline and quiet technology. That restraint is what makes it feel authentic even decades after its release. The spacecraft design reflects real engineering principles. Rotating sections simulate gravity through centrifugal force. Movement in space follows correct physics without artificial shortcuts. There is no dramatic noise during external operations. Silence dominates because that is how space behaves. These details create an environment that feels constructed rather than imagined. Artificial intelligence is portrayed with unsettling clarity. HAL is not a villain in the traditional sense. It is a system designed to function perfectly, yet it interprets conflicting directives in a way that leads to failure. That concept mirrors real concerns in modern AI development, where alignment between intention and execution remains a critical challenge. Human behavior is equally restrained. Astronauts operate with professionalism and emotional control. There is no exaggerated heroism. The focus remains on process and responsibility. This depiction aligns with how real missions prioritize discipline over personality. The film does not rely on spectacle. It relies on accuracy of environment and behavior. That commitment transforms it from a narrative into an experience that feels closer to observation than fiction. Science fiction was never meant to comfort. It was meant to prepare. These stories feel real because they are built on foundations that already exist. The question is not whether they will happen. The question is how close we are right now and whether we are ready for what comes next.